Welcome to the Bodhi Academy. My name is Shrutika and today we are going to study about Chapter 12, 7th Standard Science, Reproduction in Plants. So this is the part 2 of Chapter 12, Reproduction in Plants. In our part 1 we have studied about the various modes of reproduction in plant, and in part 1 we have covered the asexual reproduction in plants. So today we are going to see the second mode, that is sexual reproduction in plants. So sexual reproduction in plants. Sexual reproduction in plants occurs through the fusion of the gametes. So plants contains male and the female gamete, and fusion of these two gametes eventually give rise to seeds, and these seeds then develop into a new plant, and this is how sexual reproduction helps in development of a new plant. So in plants, flower is considered as the reproductive part of the plant. So flower consists of the reproductive parts of the plant, that is the male and the female reproductive part. So first let us see how the structure of flower is. So first we will see the structure of flower. So first let us see the structure of flower. Okay, so now I am drawing the structure of flower. So first let us see the structure of flower. So a flower consists of various parts. The first part is the base, and this is called as the sepal. Okay, these are the petals of the flower. This is the ovary. That's ovary. Then this is part is called the style. This part is called stigma, and the ovary consists of small ovules. This is the filament, and this part is called the anther. So basically the flower consists of these various parts: the sepals, the sepals, then the petals, the ovary, style, stigma, anther, and the filament. So this flower, which is the reproductive part of the plant, consists of the male reproductive part, which is the anther and the filament, and the female reproductive part, that is stigma, style and ovary. So now let us see the male and female reproductive part of the flower in detail. So first let us see the male reproductive part. The male reproductive part of a flower is called the stamens, and the stamen consists of so the stamen consists of anther and filament. Okay, so the male reproductive part of a flower is called the stamen, and stamen consists of anther and the filament. So anther consists of the male gamete, which is called the pollen grain. So a pollen grain is basically spherical in shape, which has a germ pore, the outer protective layer, exine, the inner layer, intine, and the nucleus. So this is the structure of pollen grain, which is the male gamete, which is produced in the stamens inside the anther of the male reproductive part. So this was about the first part of the flower, that is the male reproductive part, which was stamen. Now let us move to the female reproductive part, which is called the pistil. So the pistil Okay, now let us see the female reproductive part, that is the pistil. So pistil consists of the stigma, then the style, and this is the ovary. So ovary consists of small granules called as the ovules, and these ovules are the female gametes. So a female gamete, the ovule, is basically like this in structure. Which consists of the chalaza, micropyle, and the embryo. So this is the structure of the female gamete, that is the ovule. So this is how the ovule develops inside the ovary. So till now we have studied the sexual reproduction in plant, which takes place in the flower, and flower consists of the male reproductive part, that is the stamen, which produces the male gamete, pollen grain, and the female reproductive part called the pistil, which contains the female gamete called the ovule. So now let us move to fertilization. So fertilization is basically the process of fusion of the male and the female gametes to form zygote, and this process is called as fertilization. And the zygote will further develop into a embryo, which will further develop into a new plant. So now that we know that the male gamete is the pollen and the female gamete is the ovule, now let us see how the fusion of this male and the female gamete takes place to form the embryo. So this is the female part. So this is the pistil. So now we are seeing the process of fertilization in flower. Okay. So we know that the female part, the pistil. So here we can see that the pistil is there, which consists of a ovule. So here first the male gamete, that is the pollen grain. The pollen grain will start. So now let us see the process of fertilization in plant. So the male reproductive part, which produces the male gamete called as the pollen grain, will first come and settle on the stigma. This is the stigma of the female reproductive part. Then the pollen grain will form the pollen tube. This pollen tube, here we can see that the pollen tube which is there, after the pollen grain germinates, the pollen tube travels down the style. This part is called the style. So it will travel down the style and then enters the ovule inside the ovary, which further then forms the wherein the fertilization process takes place, wherein the male gamete, that is the pollen grain, is getting fused with the ovule, that is the female gamete, and then the fusion of the male and the female gamete, that is ovary and the pollen grain, result in formation of a zygote, and this process is called as the fertilization process. So this is the female this is the female reproductive So this is the female reproductive part called the pistil. So when the pollen grain, that is the male reproductive part, this is the pollen grain. So when the pollen grain, that is the male gamete, it falls on the stigma of the female reproductive part, what happens is the germ tube develops and it travels down the style. So the pollen tube travels down the style with the nucleus from the pollen grain, which will travel through this pollen tube, and then it enters the ovule inside the ovary. So this pollen tube will travel inside the ovary with the nucleus and then it will fuse with the ovary. So the pollen grain will fuse with the ovule, and this will result in the process of fertilization which will form the zygote, which will further form the embryo, and this embryo will then form a new plant. So this is how from the gametes, that is the flower, so this is how sexual reproduction takes place in the plant. That is, the flower is called the reproductive part of the plant, which consists of the male reproductive part, the stamens, which is made up of anther and the filament. Anther consists of the male gamete pollen. Then there is female reproductive part called the pistil, which consists of style, stigma, style and ovary. Ovary consists of ovules, which is the female gamete. Then the male and female gamete fuses to produce a zygote by the process of fertilization. And we have seen how fertilization takes place in the flowers. So in our today's class, we have learned about sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Thank you for watching today's video. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe.